He stepped into the wrong room. What he saw his maid do changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of the penthouse hallway felt nothing like home to Lina Morales. It was too quiet, too polished, too perfect. The marble floors reflected the warm overhead lights like a hotel lobby, not a place where people actually lived. She held a basket of folded linens close to her chest as she walked, her sneakers barely making a sound. Her breath left a faint fog on the chrome elevator door when she stepped out, a reminder that she had been running earlier to catch the staff shuttle. Her ponytail was slightly messy, and her uniform smelled faintly of fresh detergent from the laundry room downstairs. She hoped no one noticed. Down the private corridor, a door stood slightly open. Room 19B, the staff break room. The only place in the entire penthouse where Lina felt like she could breathe for a moment. She slipped inside, nudged the door shut with her heel, and exhaled. The room was small, dim, and cluttered with cleaning supplies, old boxes, and a piano no one cared about. An old upright piano with scratches on the wood and 3 keys sticking slightly. Mr. Hale's grandfather had sent it over years ago, and the staff used it mostly as a table to stack towels. But to Lina, it was the only place where her past life still existed. She set the basket down, pushed the piano bench out with her knee, and brushed dust from the keys. Her fingertips hovered a second. Then, like muscle memory waking from a long sleep, she began to play. A soft, broken melody filled the tiny room. It was her melody, one she wrote when she was 16, before life took everything sideways, before medical bills, before debt, before she traded music school dreams for night shifts and aching wrists. She played quietly at first, afraid the sound would leak into the hallway. But the moment the notes settled into the air, she felt something loosen in her chest, something she rarely allowed herself to feel anymore. Belonging. She closed her eyes and let the music carry her. She did not see the reflection in the small glass window of the door. She did not hear the footsteps. She did not know that her world was about to tilt. Adrian Hale had returned early. The CEO of Hale Group rarely changed his routine. He was disciplined, precise, predictable. But tonight's meeting ended abruptly, and his driver pulled into the private garage almost an hour ahead of schedule. Adrian walked down the hallway with the same calm, controlled stride he used in boardrooms. Navy coat draped over one arm, phone in hand, mind buried in numbers and projections. He barely looked up as he moved through the penthouse until he reached the wrong door. He meant to walk into his private study, room 17B. Instead, out of habit or distraction, he pushed open the door to 19B. Music spilled out instantly. Not polished, not professional, not perfect, but raw, human, honest in a way he had not heard in years. Adrian froze. In the middle of the cluttered staff room sat one of his maids, back slightly hunched, dark hair falling near her cheek, fingers gliding across damaged piano keys with surprising tenderness. Her uniform sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Her shoes were scuffed, her posture tired, but her music was alive. For the first time in a long time, something inside Adrian went still. He took one step forward, careful, almost reverent, as if a louder move would break the moment. His hand hovered near the doorframe. He forgot the emails buzzing on his phone, forgot the meeting he had just left, forgot the world outside entirely. Then Lina hit a cracked key and startled herself. The melody stumbled. She opened her eyes and gasped when she finally saw him. Her hands flew from the keys. Her face flushed instantly. She stood so fast the bench screeched against the tile. "Sir, I am sorry. You walked into the wrong room." Adrian blinked, caught between apology and awe. But all he managed to say quietly was, "I think I did." Adrian stood there longer than he intended, but Lina could not hold his gaze. Her fingers trembled as she closed the piano lid, as if trying to erase the fact that she had ever touched it. She picked up the basket of linens quickly, almost too quickly, like she wanted to vanish into the hallway before he said anything that would make the embarrassment worse. "I should get back to work, sir," she murmured. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. She walked past him, head down, shoulders tense, and the soft scent of detergent and warm fabric trailed behind her. The moment she stepped into the hallway, her steps sped up. She did not want him to see the flush on her cheeks or the panic rising in her chest. Adrian remained still, staring at the closed door. The quiet returned, but the melody she played lingered like a faint echo between the walls. Across the penthouse, Lina kept her head low as she carried the linens toward the guest wing. Her thoughts swirled so loudly she barely heard her own footsteps. How long had he been standing there? Why did he not say anything? Why was she foolish enough to touch that piano? By the time she reached the linen closet, her hands were trembling too much to place the towels neatly on the shelves. She inhaled and forced herself to slow down. She had work to do, rent to pay. A mother waiting on the other end of the phone every night, pretending not to worry. She could not afford to lose this job. Not because of a song. Down the hallway, Adrian walked toward his study, but he was not thinking about spreadsheets, meetings, or market reports. He was thinking about the girl in the uniform who played a broken piano as if she were repairing something inside herself with every note. He placed his coat on the back of his chair, but then sat without touching his computer. He stared at the skyline outside the window, the lights of New York flickering like restless stars. In his world, silence was a strategic tool, not an emotional one. But the silence right now felt different. He had seen staff members come and go for years. Efficient, polite, invisible. That was how the system worked. That was what the penthouse demanded. But Lina had not been invisible at all. Her music had cracked something open. Something he had tightly sealed. The next morning came fast. Lina arrived early, hoping the quiet hours before sunrise would help her avoid any more awkward encounters. She tied her hair back and began wiping the long dining table, her movements smooth from practice. She tried to lose herself in the routine, the one thing she could control. Clean, fold, organize, move on. But fate had other plans. She was reaching for a crystal glass on the edge of the counter when the base slipped against her damp glove. The glass teetered. She gasped quietly and lunged forward, catching it an inch before it hit the floor. Her heart pounded as she steadied the fragile stem. That was impressive. His voice was soft but close. Too close. She straightened slowly, the glass still in her hand. Adrian stood on the other side of the counter, dressed in a grey suit with his tie loosened, as if he had come from an early call. His eyes were curious in a way that made her nervous. "I did not know anyone was awake yet," Lina said. "Could not sleep," Adrian replied. His tone was calm, but he was studying her in a way that made her feel seen, and that feeling unsettled her more than the near disaster with the glass. She placed the crystal gently on the counter and stepped back, trying to regain the professional distance she relied on. "About last night," he began. "I am sorry," she blurted out. "I should not have touched the piano. I know it is not allowed in the staff room. I will not do it again." "Hup." He hesitated, and for a moment she feared he was going to reprimand her. Instead, he said something she did not expect. "I did not come here to scold you. I wanted to ask about the music." Her breath caught. "I heard your melody. It was moving." Lina blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments were rare in her world. Suspicion came easier. "It is nothing," she said quietly. "Just something I remember." It did not sound like nothing. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. She stepped back quickly, breaking eye contact. "Sir, I really need to finish setting up the dining room." Adrian nodded, but the look on his face said he was not done with the conversation. As he walked away, Lina exhaled shakily and pressed a hand to her chest. She had no idea why her heartbeat felt louder than the ticking clock on the wall, and she had no idea that this was only the beginning. Lina tried to shake off the strange tension from the morning, but it followed her through the rest of her shift like a shadow she could not outrun. By noon she had finished polishing the silverware, restocking towels, and vacuuming the hallway carpets. Yet her mind kept circling back to the same moment, the way Adrian had said the music was moving. People did not usually say things like that to her. People did not usually notice her at all. By the time her break arrived, her hands were tired, and her thoughts were heavier than the supply cart she pushed all morning. She slipped into the small staff lounge, hoping to sit for 5 quiet minutes before finishing the upstairs bathrooms. The old upright piano sat in the corner, silent, almost guilty, as if it remembered what had happened the night before. Lina glanced at it but did not dare touch it again. Not after he had heard her, Not after he had looked at her like that. She pulled out her phone instead, checking the missed call from her mother. Hospital number. Again. Lina hesitated, then called back. Her mother answered on the second ring, her voice thin but cheerful in the way mothers pretend to be. Lina, honey, are you eating well? Yes, Mama. Are you taking your medication on time? Her mother paused too long before answering. That silence hit harder than any illness. They talked for only a minute. That was all they could afford. Every second after that became a reminder of bills Lina was still paying off, prescriptions she still owed, and a future she could not imagine yet. When she hung up, she pressed the phone against her forehead and closed her eyes. Music felt like another life. Luxury, a language she no longer had permission to speak. The lounge door opened quietly. Lina straightened immediately, stuffing her phone into her pocket. She expected the head housekeeper. Instead, Adrian stepped inside, holding a stainless steel travel mug and looking almost surprised to see her there. I apologize, he said. I did not mean to interrupt. You are not interrupting, Lina replied, rising from the bench. I was just leaving. She moved toward the door, but he stepped slightly aside, giving her space while still watching her with that thoughtful expression that made her nervous. May I ask you something? He said. She paused. Yes, sir. What happened to the piano? She blinked, unsure what he meant. It has been like that since I started working here. No, he said gently. I meant, what happened to your connection with it? Lina felt her breath hitch. She looked down, fingers curling at her sides. I work here to clean, not to play, she said quietly. My life does not have room for music anymore. Adrian studied her closely, as if weighing the truth in her words against the emotion he had heard in her melody. People do not play like that unless it means something to them, he said. Lina swallowed hard. She did not want this conversation, not because it was wrong, but because it was dangerous. The more he saw her, the easier it would be to lose everything if she slipped even once. It was nothing, sir, she said again. Just a habit. She reached the door, her hand brushing the handle. Lina. His voice stopped her. When you played, you looked free. She froze. He did not say it loudly. He did not say it emotionally. It was simply honest. Too honest. Lina kept her eyes on the door. I should finish the guest bathrooms before the evening shift. Adrian stepped back, giving her space, but he did not take his eyes off her until she finally walked past him. As she disappeared down the hall, he let out a slow breath. A breath he had not realized he was holding. For the rest of the afternoon, Lina scrubbed, organized, and swept with the determination of someone trying to outrun her own heartbeat. But no matter how hard she worked, she could not forget the way he said it. You looked free. And somewhere deep inside her, she feared he was right. The next morning arrived with a soft grey light slipping through the penthouse windows, the kind of light that made everything feel quieter than it should. Lina stepped off the staff elevator with her supplies, telling herself she would keep her distance today. No piano, no long conversations, no lingering moments that made her heart stumble. She needed simplicity, predictability, not a CEO who asked about her music. The dining room was empty when she began wiping down the long, polished table. She worked with steady hands, but every sound seemed sharper today. The sweep of her cloth, the click of crystal against wood, even her breath felt too loud. She forced herself into the rhythm of her routine, the one thing that helped silence everything else. By the time she moved to the hallway leading to the guest suites, she felt more centered. She propped open a linen cart and reached for a stack of fresh towels when a voice behind her said, "Good morning." Lina nearly dropped the towels. Adrian stood a few feet away, sleeves rolled to his forearms, hair slightly tousled, not the polished image she saw in magazine articles. He looked human this morning. That somehow made it worse. "Good morning, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes on the towels. "You can call me Adrian," he said. Her heart skipped. "I prefer to stay professional, sir." He nodded slowly, though she sensed he did not fully agree. "Understood." She turned away, hoping that was the end of it. But then he noticed the way she rubbed her wrist and stepped closer. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No, just tired," she answered quickly. "It is normal. It is a long shift. Have you had breakfast?" She froze. He said it calmly, but the question felt too personal, too caring. Nobody asked Lina that. Not at work, not at home. People asked her to clean, to hurry, to cover extra shifts, but not if she had eaten. "Yes," she lied softly. "I am fine." He did not call out the lie. He simply said, "If you ever need a meal during your shift, the kitchen can prepare something for you. You do not have to work on an empty stomach." Lina shook her head. "I do not want to trouble anyone." "It is not trouble," he said. "It is basic humanity." She did not know how to respond to that, so she kept folding towels. Adrian watched her a moment longer, then walked toward his office, stopping once to glance back as if he wanted to say something else, but decided against it. The door shut behind him. Lina exhaled, her shoulders dropping. She finished the hallway and headed to the north wing, where the sunroom windows needed wiping. She loved this room because it overlooked the city. Tall buildings, wide streets, the kind of view that belonged to someone with choices. She was halfway through cleaning the glass when she heard two staff members whispering near the doorway. "He came down to the lounge yesterday." "To talk to her?" "I think so." "Oh, that is unusual for him." Lina's grip on the towel tightened. She waited until their voices faded before she continued wiping the window. Her hands moved on autopilot, but her thoughts spun out of control. She could not afford attention. The more people talked, the more dangerous this became. Not because Adrian had crossed a line he had not, but because the world around them would draw its own conclusions. She worked faster, trying to outrun her own fear. She slipped inside, nudged the door shut with her heel, and exhaled. The room was small, dim, and cluttered with cleaning supplies, old boxes, and a piano no one cared about. An old upright piano with scratches on the wood and 3 keys sticking slightly. Mr. Hale's grandfather had sent it over years ago, and the staff used it mostly as a table to stack towels. But to Lina, it was the only place where her past life still existed. She hissed in pain as she pulled her hand back. A thin line of red welled across the top of her knuckle. Nothing dramatic, but enough to make her stomach drop. She could not afford an injury, not even a small one. She wrapped her fingers in a paper towel just as footsteps echoed down the hall. "Lina?" Adrian appeared in the doorway, expression changing instantly when he saw her holding her hand. "What happened?" "It is nothing," she said. "The window latch just slipped." End of tip. He stepped closer, gently but with purpose. "Let me see." "Sir, it is only a scratch." "Lina." She hesitated, then opened the paper towel. The cut was small, but bright red against her skin. Without a word, Adrian reached for the first aid kit mounted on the wall. His movements were precise, practiced. He cleaned the cut carefully, almost too gently, as if he feared hurting her more. "You should not be fixing that window alone," he said. "Some of the frames are old." "Elor." "I did not want to bother anyone," she whispered. He met her eyes, and for a moment the world felt unbearably still. "You are not a bother." Her heartbeat stumbled. He placed a bandage on her knuckle, smooth and steady. "Next time," he said softly, "please tell someone." She nodded, unable to speak. And as Adrian stepped back, something in his expression shifted. A hint of concern, a hint of something he was not ready to name. Lina walked out of the closet slowly, the weight of the day settling around her. She could feel it. The distance between them was changing, and she did not know if that was a blessing or a warning. Lina finished the rest of her shift with her hand wrapped carefully, avoiding any tasks that required heavy lifting. She kept her pace steady, pretending the bandage meant nothing. But every time the fabric brushed her skin, she remembered Adrian's voice, low and concerned, saying she was not a bother. That sentence stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. By early evening, she stepped into the staff locker room to clock out. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning spray and warm dryer sheets. She changed into her simple grey jacket, tied her hair into a neat ponytail, and gathered her lunch container, which was still full because she had never gotten the chance to eat. As she slung her bag over her shoulder, her phone vibrated with a message from her sister. "Mom had another dizzy spell. Doctor says she needs the new medication now. Insurance will not cover it." Lina closed her eyes. Another bill, another wait. She had no room to carry. She typed back quickly, promising she would figure something out. She always did. But tonight, the exhaustion caught up to her harder than usual. A dull ache settled behind her ribs, the kind that came from holding up too many pieces of a life held together by effort alone. She left the locker room and headed for the service elevator, hoping to catch the shuttle before it left. As she passed the hallway near the kitchen, she heard quiet voices again. 2 senior staff members stood near the counter, whispering. I heard Mr. Hale asked about her hours. Which one? The new one. Lina. Strange. He never pays attention to staff. Maybe he is just being polite. Maybe. Lina froze behind the corner, her breath tightening. She hated this. Being noticed felt dangerous in a way she could not explain. She needed this job. Her mother needed this job. Rumors were the last thing she could afford. She hurried toward the exit before they saw her. But as she reached the end of the corridor, a voice called out behind her. Lina, are you heading out? Her steps halted. Adrian stood beside the staircase, coat on, keys in hand, as if he had just finished a meeting. He looked surprised to see her, but not displeased. Yes, sir, she said politely. My shift is over. Do you take the shuttle home? He asked. She nodded. It is late, he said. You should not walk to the shuttle stop alone. I am used to it, she answered. It is only a few minutes. That does not make it safe. The firmness in his tone startled her, but before she could respond, he stepped aside and gestured toward the private elevator. I can have the driver take you, he offered. Her eyes widened. No, sir, absolutely not. That is for you. I could not accept that. It is not a gift, Adrian said. It is simply transportation. But people will talk, she said quietly. He stopped at that, studying her with a look she could not decode. Then his voice softened. Lina, you work hard here. Ensuring you get home safely is the least anyone should do. She shook her head again. I appreciate it, sir, but I would rather use the shuttle. Something inside him pulled back at her refusal, but he nodded respectfully. All right, but at least let me walk you to the garage level. Howden. Sir, it is not negotiable, he said gently. She exhaled, knowing she would lose this argument. He walked beside her down the hallway, keeping a polite distance, never crossing a line. But even that distance felt like it hummed with unspoken tension. When they reached the garage level, the cool air drifted in from the open side door. The shuttle was parked by the loading zone, its engine humming softly. Lina turned to him. Thank you, truly. You are welcome, he said. She hesitated, then added, and for earlier, with the bandage. I'm glad I was there, he replied. For a moment, neither of them moved. The buzz of the shuttle engine filled the air between them. Her eyes drifted to the ground, then back up at him before she caught herself and looked away quickly. She stepped onto the shuttle, gripping the metal pole for balance. As she found a seat, she glanced through the window. Adrian was still standing there, not hurried, not distracted, just watching to make sure she got on safely. The shuttle doors closed with a soft hiss. The vehicle pulled away from the garage, leaving Adrian behind. But Lina could not shake the feeling that something between them had shifted again, something neither of them had intended. As the city lights blurred past the windows, she lifted her hand and stared at the small beige bandage on her knuckle. It was a tiny thing, but to someone who spent her life being invisible, it felt like the beginning of a crack in the walls she had built. Lina returned to work the next morning with a quiet determination, the kind that came from a long night of thinking. She had lain awake replaying every moment in the garage, every word Adrian had spoken, every look she wished she had not noticed. She told herself she needed distance, that she needed to keep things simple and professional. No more moments that made her chest tighten, no more hesitations. She stepped off the staff elevator and headed straight for the laundry room to collect fresh towels. Her hand brushed the bandage on her knuckle, still tender, and she tucked it into her sleeve before anyone could see. By mid-morning, she was restocking bathrobes in the guest wing when she heard a familiar voice echo down the hallway. Good morning, Mr. Hale. It was the head housekeeper. Lina placed the last robe on the shelf and stepped out, intending to move to the next room. But the moment she turned, she saw Adrian walking beside the housekeeper, listening as she reviewed the week's schedule. His eyes found Lina almost instantly. It was not dramatic, no sharp turn of the head, no halted conversation, just a steady, unmistakable acknowledgement that made her pulse stutter. The housekeeper noticed and paused. Lina, are the sunroom windows complete? Yes, ma'am, Lina answered quickly. I finished them yesterday. Good, the housekeeper said. She turned back to Adrian. The staff rotation should remain stable. He nodded, but his gaze lingered on Lina a second longer before he moved on. When they disappeared around the corner, Lina leaned against the doorway, exhaling slowly. She had hoped distance would make things easier. Instead, it made everything feel heavier. She returned to her tasks, folding, dusting, straightening pillows with mechanical focus. But as she bent to pick up a dropped towel, Something slipped from her shirt pocket. A small notebook, the thin, worn one where she kept bits of old melodies and unfinished compositions. She froze when it hit the carpet. She picked it up fast, pressing it to her chest. It was the last piece of her old life, the one she guarded more closely than anything she owned. She tucked it deep into her bag, hoping no one had seen. But someone had. When she entered the service hallway a moment later, Adrian stood near the end of the corridor. He must have doubled back from his meeting. His hands were in his pockets, but his expression was not formal. It was curious. "Is that your music book?" he asked. Her breath caught. "It is nothing important, sir." "I doubt that," he said. Lina shook her head. "Please, it is just something I keep with me. It helps me stay grounded." "May I see it?" he asked gently. She stiffened. "No, sir. I mean, it is personal." He studied her face, reading the quiet panic she tried to hide. Instead of insisting, he nodded with unexpected understanding. "All right," he said. "I respect that." Relief washed through her, but it was followed by something else she did not want to name. He stepped a little closer, but still kept a respectful distance. But every time the fabric brushed her skin, she remembered Adrian's voice, low and concerned, saying she was not a bother. That sentence stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. By early evening, she stepped into the staff locker room to clock out. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and the air smelled faintly of cleaning spray and warm dryer sheets. As she walked away, she could feel his gaze following her for a moment before he turned back toward his office. And Lina realized something terrifying in its simplicity. Adrian was not trying to break the walls she built. He was simply noticing the cracks that were already there. That evening, the penthouse felt unusually still, the kind of stillness that made even the soft hum of the air vents sound loud. Lina finished her tasks in the guest wing and returned to the service corridor to put away her supplies. She moved quietly, hoping to finish her shift without another unexpected moment that left her questioning her place in this house. But fate rarely cared about timing. As she rounded the corner toward the utility closet, she heard a sound she did not expect, a faint, almost delicate note drifting through the hall. A piano note. Soft, hesitant, as if someone was testing the keys. Her steps slowed. No one ever touched that old piano. No one except her. She followed the sound down the corridor until she reached the staff lounge. The door was slightly open, and the warm glow from inside spilled into the hallway. Lina pushed it gently, and the room opened in front of her. Adrian was standing at the old upright piano. His hands hovered above the keys, not pressing, just learning their shape. He looked almost out of place in the small, cluttered room, his tailored shirt, his composed posture, his calm presence surrounded by cleaning supplies and worn furniture. He glanced at her, not startled, just quietly acknowledging her arrival. "I wanted to understand," he said. Her breath caught. "Understand what, sir?" "What you hear," Adrian replied. "What you feel when you play." Lina stood frozen in the doorway, fingers gripping the frame. "Sir, this room is for staff only." He gave a small, almost apologetic smile. "Then I suppose I should be the one to say I am sorry for stepping into the wrong room again." The words were casual, but the meaning was not. She sensed it immediately. He stepped back from the piano. "May I hear the melody again? Only if you want to. Not for me. For yourself." Her pulse fluttered. She shook her head gently. "I cannot. I should not. Someone might hear." "I will close the door," he said softly. "No one has to know." "And do." The offer was sincere, but she stepped further into the room with caution. "Sir, every time I play, I remember the life I used to have, and the life I lost." Adrian's expression shifted, a subtle shadow passing through his eyes. "Maybe you did not lose it," he said. "Maybe it has been waiting." The words struck deeper than she expected. He did not move closer. He did not push. He simply held the space open for her, without judgment, without expectation. Lina swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot afford to hope for things that are not possible." He nodded slowly. "Then let me ask you something simple." She looked up. "When you played, did it hurt, or did it help?" Her breath trembled. "It helped," she admitted. "Then that is enough," he said softly. The room fell quiet again, except for the faint hum of the overhead light. Lina stepped back, overwhelmed, unsure, unsteady, in a way that had nothing to do with fear. She turned toward the hallway. "Good night, sir." "Good night, Lina." and as she walked away from the staff room, her footsteps soft against the tile, she realized something had shifted again, not because of a grand moment, but because of a quiet one. A moment where someone finally understood without needing anything in return. The following day, the weather shifted. A thin layer of cloud settled over the city, dimming the penthouse windows and casting everything in a muted, silvery light. Lina arrived early, hoping the quiet morning would steady her thoughts. But the moment she stepped into the main hall, she sensed an unusual energy in the air. The staff moved faster. Voices whispered. Someone mentioned a charity event. Someone else mentioned guests arriving in the evening. Lina kept walking, tightening her grip on her cleaning caddy. When she reached the dining room, she found Adrian already there. He stood at the far end of the long table, reviewing a stack of invitations with his assistant. He looked tired but focused, dressed in a dark suit that made the dim light catch against his shoulders. His assistant finished speaking and stepped out. Then Adrian looked up. Their eyes met for just a second, steady, quiet, familiar in a way she did not want to acknowledge. Lina lowered her gaze and began adjusting the place settings. "You will not need to prepare the West Wing today," Adrian said, his voice carrying gently across the room. "We are hosting a board reception tonight. Security will handle that area." "Yes, sir," Lina replied without looking up. She heard his footsteps cross the room. Slow, deliberate, stopping a few feet away. "You seem distant today," he said. "I am just focused on my work," she answered carefully. "Is that the truth?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yes, sir," studied her quietly. "If I said or did anything to make you uncomfortable, I need you to tell me." Her hands froze on the polished silver fork she was aligning. She shook her head quickly. "You did not, sir. I'm just trying to stay professional." "I respect that," he said softly. She nodded, relieved. But the moment she turned to leave, he spoke again. "Lina, about last night." She stopped. "I did not come to the lounge to intrude on you," he said. "I came because your music stayed with me. I wanted to understand why." Her heartbeat picked up in her throat. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I am here to work, that is all." "And what about what you want?" he asked. She did not answer. She could not. He stepped back, giving her space. "If you ever want to play again, the decision is yours. Not the job's, not the rules. Yours." Lina walked past him, her breath unsteady, her thoughts tangled. She needed distance. She needed clarity. But as she reached the hallway, she heard his final words follow her like a quiet echo. "You do not have to live your life hiding the parts of yourself that were meant to shine." She kept walking, but the truth of his voice trailed her long after she left the room. The evening of the board reception arrived with the kind of polished elegance only wealth could buy. It is simply a door. If you want to walk through it, you can. If you do not, it will close gently. But I wanted you to have the choice. Lina looked up at him, eyes stinging in a way she did not understand until it happened. For the first time in years, someone was not telling her who she had to be. Someone was offering her the chance to remember who she was. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. His answer was soft, steady. "You are welcome, Lina." The low desk. She stepped back toward the hallway, the ticket held carefully in her hand. The noise of the reception faded behind her, replaced by the quiet hum of her own heartbeat. And for the first time since she began working in that penthouse, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt possible. She felt maybe for the first time in a long time free. The night ended, the guests filtered out, and the penthouse lights dimmed. But Lina carried that small envelope home like a promise that the wrong room she had walked into had somehow led her toward the right version of herself.